Are you ready for change?
Hit it! That's what I'm talking about.
Wait! Okay, now, from the beginning.
Hit it, boys.
You're listening to the Mr. Change Agent podcast with your host, Ron Ovid, minister, pastoral counselor, teacher, recovery coach, and author. He's creator of Emotional Relearning. He's an expert when it comes to changing habits and looking and confronting those things that we habitually do that really, frankly, isn't good for us. So we're going to talk about that today. Ron, how are you doing?
I'm doing fine, thanks. Excited to be here. Excited about talking about triggers today and habits. Picking a habit goal.
Okay, well, you talk about habit goals a lot. I was reading some of your material. What specifically do you mean by habit goal?
Well, you know, it's easy to just think, well, gee, I want to get healthy. And that's a great goal. But what's that mean? You know, we have to be a little more specific. For example, does that mean that I'm going to exercise? Does that mean I'm going to eat differently? Am I going to start sleeping better? Am I going to reduce stress or take some kind of supplements? So, you know, we need to get a little bit more specific. For example, you know, I want to start walking 30 minutes a day, or I want to eat a low-calorie salad for lunch on, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So getting a little more specific helps us with our goals.
Well, what if a goal happens to be too hard? I mean, what if you bite off more than you can chew, so to speak? How do people get defeated? What's your encouragement there?
Well, that's a great question. I know that happened to me. I was 23 years old. I had been going to the YMCA, pretty buff, man. You know, I was lifting weights and doing a lot of stuff, and this one guy looked at me, he says, man, you're out of shape. And I go, what? You know, and he goes, yeah, can you do your run? I go, no. He's there, well, you know, you need to start running or something like that. Well, so I decided, you know, because I ran when I was a kid and everything, so I thought I'd start running and maybe 3-4 miles a day. But I only could do a quarter mile. I ran down to a bridge, sat down at the bridge, catching my breath, and then ran the quarter mile back. My dog that I took with me did better than I did. But, you know, that's the start. And I guess what I'm saying is sometimes we need to do a mini goal, what I call a mini goal. And, you know, if you're going to start exercising, and let's say your goal is to do 20 push-ups, start with 1. Start with 2. Because what happens is that we get excited about that. We do it. It's easy to do. And then after a while, we'll see that we're able to do more. There's something in us about pushing ourselves. And so it won't take long. It didn't take long before I started going, 3-4 miles. And I've put in, well over 15,000 miles, on my body here. So, mini goals are good. Take what you want. If you need to, start with a smaller goal and then work your way up.
Well, okay. So you're dealing with a problem in your life, be it a habit, be it a condition you have, and you set a goal, and let's say you achieve it. So you're done? Is that it?
Yeah, I guess in a sense. You want to, if you've accomplished your goal, you got a new habit, you got to maintain it. Let me give you an example. Like in lifting weights, when I started with a mini goal, lightweight, low reps, built my way up. When I quit caffeine, I went cold turkey. When I quit sugar and carbs, I went cold turkey. But of course, I had to start maintaining it. I've been doing that for years, and it isn't every day that I go without sugar. Heck, sugar's everywhere, right? But I maintain it, and so that's what you want to get to a place where you maintain it. When it came to my daily devotions, time that I spend with God in reading and meditation, I started small, reading small portions because I wanted to build a daily habit. See, anyone can do something once, but we're talking about habits, and old habits are hard to break. So, in fact, I think another concept here is what I call secondary habits.
No, before you get there, Ron, Maybe I'm getting a little confused, but you're using the word habits, which is cool. But there's good habits and then there's bad habits. So you're saying take a bad habit, stop that, but you replace it with a good habit? Or is the word habit bad in and of itself? I mean,
no. That's a good question. a lot of times the easiest way to stop a habit is replacing it. We'll talk about this in a future podcast about the different things. There's, stimulus, response, and reward is the classical language. Trigger, behavior, and the reward. Well, a lot of times it's okay to keep a reward out there. You're hungry. Okay, the reward is satisfaction. You eat. So you need to replace what you're eating and get satisfied with that. So sometimes replacing is the best way. But sometimes you just got to get rid of bad habits. But I find that usually I'll try to manipulate something. I'll try to manipulate the stimulus and then change the behavior. And so then I get a different reward that is more satisfying. And there's a lot of ways to play with that. We'll talk about that in a future podcast.
Okay, so some things you just cut, like you said, you went cold turkey on the carbs and sugar.
Well, caffeine, I went cold turkey.
So you
but
don't
I still
replace
drink.
It.
Well, I
you
mean,
replace it with
sure,
a non-caffeine.
Exactly, right. I got a non-caffeine drink. And so, because drinking is, something I need, right? And of course, some people would replace it with more water, which is healthy. So a lot of times you'll find that you're doing something for reasons, and you don't always have to get rid of that reason. You want to create it into a better result.
Okay, I'm intrigued by this secondary habit. What do you mean by secondary habit?
Well, what trips us up, and this in fact, we're going to do quite a few broadcasts here or podcasts on triggers, and so we won't get into it all today. But secondary habits are these habits that trip us up, and we don't know it all the time. For example, let's say you want to stop sugary treats. Okay, well, a secondary, you need to ask yourself, where do you eat them? When do you eat them? Who do you eat them with? What kind do you eat? What mood are you in when you crave them? What are you thinking when the craving hits? What are you believing when you try to resist? These are all habitual thoughts and behaviors. So if I was going to stop, I don't want to necessarily stop my coffee break in the morning. I like the people I go with, so I talk to them and say, look, I'm going to try some low sugary things here or some non-sugary things, and you bring your own or you buy something else. But that's a secondary habit you better look at or you're going to get tripped up.
Because sometimes, let's say you go out with the wrong crowd, you want to quit drinking alcohol.
Right.
Well, if you keep hanging out at the same bar with the same people, it's going to be hard to resist.
Exactly. That's a secondary habit. So the habit of not drinking is the primary, but a secondary. Another one would be going by that bar on your way home. Yeah, okay. You might want to take an alternate route. I mean, these things, it depends upon the seriousness of your habit. We got to take these things serious. And and part of what we teach and train, and they can go to our videos and even take some of our courses, we really try to teach them how to look for those secondary habits. And if it's like winning the war by winning the beachheads,
Okay. Wow, you've really got me thinking about those secondary habits. That's intriguing because a lot of times we get in trouble by where we hang out, who we hang out with, some of the things that we just do. And what you're saying is we need to be on the lookout of our environment and the things that might lead us down the wrong path. Talk a little bit more about that.
Well, we're going to talk about that in a future podcast. I have the script ready for it, and that is, how do you manage your triggers? And let me give you a funny story. I was working with a girl that wanted her dad to stop drinking, right? And so he reluctantly came in. And he had been doing drugs and drinking, and he's older now. It's killing him. He's dying. And so, what are you going to do? Well, he came in, and he looked like he was in the band The Grateful Dead. And I'm thinking, okay, if you're serious about stopping drinking and drugging, then why are you using your uniform? I mean, it's amazing. Now, you wouldn't think something like that, but every day he gets up, looks in the mirror, dresses, he's looking like his old drug habits. And so a simple little thing like that, changing your wardrobe, getting a haircut, it's amazing how that can help us break out of some of those just wired-in behaviors. And so there's a whole thing about your environment, where you work, and we'll talk about that when we get to managing the triggers. But secondary habits, I would encourage our audience here to start looking at secondary habits. And then the next podcast, of course, they can do them in what order they want, but next we're going to be talking about picking our team. How do we pick a team to help us? If we're going to get serious about it, how do we pick a team?
Well, this has been fascinating. Thank you, Ron. Our guest has been Ron Ovid, director and founder of Empower Ministry, and Mr. Change Agent. And we're going to be learning a lot through this series, so I would encourage you to make it a habit to listen to this podcast. And that would be a good habit to get into looking at those and finding out how we can just straighten our lives around and break some of those nasty habits we've been praying and worrying about for so many years. Hey, thanks for joining us. You've been listening to Mr. Change Agent Podcast. And Mr. Change Agent himself right here is Ron Ovid, director and founder of Empower Ministry. And Ron, thank you so much. This has been great advice, and I'm sure the listeners are going to make it a habit to listen to this Mr. Change Agent Podcast.
Thanks for listening to today's podcast. Please share this with others. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of the future podcasts. I look forward to seeing you at the same time next week. If you want more information on things that we're doing, you can go to ronovid.com. That's ronovid.com.